The neutron star's hollowed core pulsed with cold light, illuminating the vast chamber where the conclave of stellar war councils convened. 57 seats arranged in concentric rings, each carved from materials sacred to their respective worlds, crystalline thrones, living wood cradles, and metallic perches that hovered on anti-gravity fields. Representatives from every major stellar power occupied their designated positions, their forms as diverse as the stars they hailed from, all except one. At the innermost ring, positioned at what many considered the place of highest honor, or deepest scrutiny, stood an empty seat. Unlike the others, this chair was simple, polished obsidian inlaid with pale blue-green swirls resembling a planet once called Earth. No delegate had ever occupied it. No voice had ever emanated from its position. Yet the chair remained, millennium after millennium, as both warning and reminder. Captain Mira Solon of the Ilari Vanguard stood before the assembly, her silver-streaked skin reflecting the chamber's harsh light. As a member of a crystalline species, her thoughts rippled visibly beneath her translucent epidermis, currently revealing tight, controlled patterns that betrayed her nervousness despite her rigid military posture. "Captain Solon," intoned High Arbiter Nyx, the ancient void speaker whose gaseous form undulated within an ornate containment field. "You have been selected as Earth's envoy in absentia. Do you understand what this entails?" Mira's inner light pulsed once in acknowledgement. "I understand the symbolic nature of the appointment, High Arbiter. I am to represent the interests of a civilization 50 years extinct, whose seat remains as testament to their significance." A murmur rippled through the assembled delegates. The word significance carried weight here. Earth had been many things to many species, nemesis, ally, enigma, but never insignificant. "Not merely symbolic," corrected Nyx, tendrils of vapor curling within its containment field. "The empty seat doctrine requires a living proxy to cast votes and participate in deliberations. You will speak for Earth in all matters of war and peace." Mira's inner light flickered with suppressed emotion. The appointment was unprecedented. The Ilari had been among Earth's fiercest adversaries during the final Convergence War. Now she, a decorated Ilari captain, would represent the very civilization her ancestors had helped to silence. "May I ask why I was chosen?" Mira's voice remained steady, though her crystalline surface revealed ripples of confusion. Elder Tekaver of the Merid Confederation rose on his 6 articulated limbs. "Your psychological profile indicates minimal residual animosity toward humans. Your tactical assessments show appreciation for their strategic innovations. You are—" The massive arthropoid's mandibles clicked in what passed for hesitation among his kind. "Uniquely positioned to speak without the burden of excessive hatred or reverence." Mira understood the subtext. She was not old enough to have fought humans directly. She had studied them objectively, clinically, their victories and their failures. She had even developed a grudging respect for their adaptive capabilities. This made her dangerous to some, valuable to others. "The appointment is not negotiable," said Nyx, bringing the discussion to a close. "You will be granted access to all surviving Earth records and relics. You will study their war doctrine, their cultural imperatives, their decision matrices. You will become, in effect, the voice of humanity." Mira's inner light pulsed with acceptance, though uncertainty simmered beneath her crystalline surface. And what if Earth itself should speak again? The chamber fell silent. It was a question no one had dared to ask in 50 years, not since the final transmission from Sol system had faded into static. Not since the great flashes of light that had marked humanity's last stand against an enemy they had refused to name. High Arbiter Nyx's vapor form condensed slightly, the equivalent of a grave frown. "Earth does not speak. Captain, Earth will never speak again. That is why we maintain the empty seat. That is why we remember." As the council session adjourned, Mira approached the obsidian chair that would never be filled. Its surface gleamed with an almost liquid quality, the blue-green swirls capturing the likeness of oceans and continents long since reduced to cosmic dust. She reached out, not quite touching the sacred object, wondering what whispers it might hold if stone could speak. "They were not what you think," came a rasping voice behind her. Mira turned to find Kor-An, the scarred, married warrior whose exoskeleton bore the distinctive pockmarks of human plasma weapons. Unlike Elder Tukavir, Kor-An had fought humans directly during the convergence and carried both the physical and psychological wounds of that encounter. "I've studied the war records," Mira replied carefully. "I know what they were." Kor-An's compound eyes glittered with something between amusement and contempt. "Records? You think records tell you what it was like to face them? They should have been weak, soft-bodied, short-lived. Instead, they fought like they had nothing to lose and everything to prove. They lost, nonetheless," Mira noted, maintaining her diplomatic tone. "Did they?" Kor-An gestured toward the empty seat. "Then why do we still keep their place? Why do we still speak their name with caution? Why does the Council feel the need to appoint an envoy to a ghost?" Before Mira could formulate a response, the married warrior turned away, his armored form making a harsh scraping sound against the chamber floor. "Be careful, Captain. The humans had a saying, 'Speak of the devil,' and he appears. I wonder what will appear now that you've been tasked with speaking for Earth." Mira watched him go, her inner light pulsing with troubled thoughts. She had accepted the appointment with the rational part of her mind, the part trained in military precision and diplomatic protocol. But something else stirred within her crystalline core, curiosity. Not just about what Earth had been, but about what it might have become if fate had turned differently. As she prepared to leave the council chamber, a notification chimed in her neural implant. A priority message, encoded for her eyes only. Unusual, given her recent appointment had not yet been officially announced beyond the council. The message was brief. Coordinates followed by 3 words that would change everything. Earth still breathes. No sender. No verification code. Just those 3 words and a set of coordinates that pointed to the outer reaches of the Ashen Rift. A spatial anomaly where time and physics bent in ways that defied conventional navigation. A place most ships avoided. A place where things disappeared. Mira's first instinct was to report the message to Council security. Anonymous communications involving extinct civilizations had all the hallmarks of a trap, possibly laid by separatist factions seeking to destabilize the fragile peace. Yet something stopped her. The timing was too precise, the message too specific. If this was a trap, it was meant for her alone, Earth's new envoy in absentia. As she left the chamber, Mira cast one final glance at the empty obsidian seat with its swirls of blue and green. For 50 years, it had served as a memorial to a civilization that had fought and fallen. Now, for the first time, she wondered if it might instead be a promise or a threat of return. The coordinates led to nowhere and everywhere at once. 3 weeks after receiving the anonymous message, Mira stood on the bridge of the stellar vanguard vessel Parhelion, staring at sensor readings that contradicted themselves with every sweep. The Ashen Rift lived up to its reputation, a wound in space where reality frayed at the edges, where radiation and gravity played by different rules. "Captain, we're detecting chronometric distortions consistent with a Class 3 anomaly," reported her navigation officer, a young Ilari named Vex, whose crystalline form still showed the clear, unblemished patterns of youth. "Conventional sensors are unreliable beyond this point." Mira nodded, her own inner light steady with resolve. "Deploy the tachyon buoys. We'll establish a navigational grid that can compensate for the temporal fluctuations." From a tactical station across the bridge, Security Chief Kor-An, the same scarred married warrior who had confronted her in the council chamber, clicked his mandibles in disapproval. His presence on this mission had been Elder Tukava's idea, officially to provide security expertise, unofficially to keep watch on the newly appointed Earth envoy. The buoys won't last long in this radiation, Koran warned. And even if they do, they'll only give us a few hours of reliable navigation at best. A few hours is all we need, Mira replied. She had shared the mysterious message with no one, instead requisitioning the Parhelion for what she termed a calibration exercise, testing new sensor arrays in the unique conditions of the Ashen Rift. A flimsy pretext, but sufficient to secure a small crew and a ship capable of withstanding the Rift's dangers. Koran's compound eyes studied her with obvious suspicion. What exactly are we calibrating for? Captain, there's nothing out here but dust and radiation. That's what we're here to verify, Mira said, maintaining her official story. Recent theoretical models suggest the rift might be stabilizing in certain sectors. If true, it could open new transit routes. The Marid warrior didn't believe her. That much was clear from his aggressive posture, but he had no grounds to challenge her directly. Not yet. As the tachyon buoys deployed, creating a navigational web through the chaotic space, Mira's attention was drawn to a new presence on the bridge. Seelie Ka, the Zalathi empath, whose serpentine form glided silently across the deck, her iridescent scales reflecting the sensor displays in hypnotic patterns. You seek more than new routes. Captain, Seelie Ka observed, her voice a melodic whisper that somehow carried across the bridge. Your thoughts are focused on something specific, something hidden. Mira's inner light constricted defensively. The Zalathi weren't true telepaths. They couldn't read thoughts directly, but their empathic abilities made them dangerously perceptive when it came to intentions and emotions. Having Seelie Ka aboard was another recommendation from the Council, purportedly to study the psychological effects of rift exposure on the crew. My thoughts are focused on our mission, Empath Seelie Ka, Mira replied evenly. The rift holds many secrets. It's my job to determine which ones merit further investigation. Seelie Ka's vertical pupils dilated slightly. Indeed. And yet, there is anticipation in your aura. Expectation. You believe we will find something specific. Before Mira could formulate a response that wouldn't reveal too much, the sensor array erupted with alerts. Contact, called out Vex from the navigation console. Metallic signature at coordinates 227 by 84 by 115, approximately 20,000 kilometers from our position. Identification, Mira demanded, grateful for the interruption. Vex's crystalline form pulsed with confusion. Unknown configuration. The mass and density readings are inconsistent with any registered vessel type. And there's something else. The young officer's voice trailed off as he manipulated the sensor controls. Report, officer, Mira prompted. There's an energy signature. Faint but distinct. It matches. It matches old Earth protocols. Captain, I think it's a human distress beacon. The bridge fell silent. Even Koran's perpetual mandible clicking ceased as the implications sank in. Impossible, the Marid warrior finally declared. Earth technology was dismantled or catalogued 50 years ago. There are no active human vessels. Mira's inner light pulsed with an emotion she couldn't quite name. Vindication, perhaps, or the beginning of understanding. And yet our sensors say otherwise. Plot an intercept course. Vex, maximum safe speed through the tachyon grid. Captain, Koran interjected, his tone sharp with warning. Protocol requires that we report this finding to the Council before proceeding, if this truly is human technology. If this truly is human technology. Mira cut him off. Then as Earth's appointed envoy, I have jurisdiction. We investigate first, report second. The Marid warrior's exoskeleton bristled with tension, but he knew she was technically correct. The empty seat doctrine gave Earth's envoy certain autonomies, a political concession designed to honor the memory of an extinct civilization while ensuring its remaining technologies were properly contained. As the Parhelion altered course toward the mysterious signal, Sci-Fi glided closer to Mira, her serpentine body coiling in a way that blocked them momentarily from the rest of the bridge crew. "You knew," the empath whispered, her voice too low for others to hear. "Somehow, you knew we would find this." Mira neither confirmed nor denied, her crystalline surface carefully controlled to reveal nothing. "What do you sense from the object, empath? Is there consciousness? Life?" Sci-Fi's scales rippled with uncertainty. "The rift interferes with my perception, but there is something, an echo, perhaps a memory trapped in time," her vertical pupils fixed on Mira with sudden intensity. "Be careful, Captain. Not all memories are meant to be awakened." The Parhelion approached the coordinates with caution, its shields at maximum to ward off the rift's unpredictable radiation bursts. As they drew closer, the object resolved on their view screens, a vessel unlike any Mira had seen before, though she recognized elements from her studies of human engineering. It was smaller than she had expected, perhaps 70 meters in length. Its hull was a patchwork of materials, some recognizably human in origin, others appearing salvaged or adapted from alien technologies. Most striking was its shape, not the utilitarian designs favored by late-period human military craft, but something more organic, almost artistic in its contours. "The Astra Remnant," Mira murmured, the name coming to her from somewhere deep in her memory banks, perhaps from one of the countless historical archives she had studied in preparation for her role as Earth's envoy. "What did you say?" Kor-An demanded, his compound eyes fixed on her with renewed suspicion. "The design resembles theoretical plans for a long-range scout vessel called the Astra Remnant," Mira explained, thinking quickly. It was never built, or so the records claimed. The married warrior's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation. "Human records are notoriously unreliable. They concealed their most advanced technologies even from their allies." Vex interrupted from the navigation console. "Captain, the distress beacon is still active, but power readings from the vessel are minimal. Life support appears to be functioning in a limited capacity, but I'm not detecting any biological signatures." "Prepare a boarding party," Mira ordered. "Environmental suits with independent air supply. We don't know what contaminants might be present." "I will accompany you," Kor-An stated, not a request but a declaration. Mira had expected this. "As will empath Sci-Fi," she countered, ignoring the Zalathi's look of surprise. "If there are survivors in some form of stasis, her abilities may be useful in assessing their condition." The real reason, of course, was balance. Mira didn't trust Kor-An's intentions toward any human technology or potential survivors they might find. The Marid had suffered greatly in their conflicts with Earth, and the warrior's scarred exoskeleton told its own story of personal grudges. Having the empathic Zalathi present might temper any rash actions. As they prepared to board the mysterious vessel, Mira found herself facing an unexpected ethical dilemma. Her duty as a conclave officer was clear: document the discovery, secure any dangerous technologies, report everything to the Council. But her new role as Earth's envoy complicated matters. If, against all odds, there were human survivors aboard the Astra Remnant, what did she owe them? Protection? Advocacy? Or the cold justice of a galaxy that had already written their epitaph? The boarding party consisted of Mira, Kor-An, Sci-Fi, and 2 Ilari security officers equipped with containment fields and non-lethal suppression weapons. As they crossed the short distance between ships in a shielded shuttle, Mira studied the Astra Remnant more carefully. The vessel bore scars of ancient battles, plasma scoring along its port side, impact craters consistent with kinetic weaponry, patches of hull that had clearly been replaced with whatever materials were available. Yet for all its damage, it had a certain elegance that spoke of careful design and desperate innovation. How did it survive here? One of the security officers wondered aloud. The rift should have torn it apart decades ago. Perhaps that was the point, Mira suggested. The rift's temporal distortions might have preserved it, kept it in a kind of stasis while the rest of the galaxy moved on. Or perhaps, Kor-An added darkly, it was placed here deliberately, a trap set by the humans before their fall. The shuttle docked with the Astra remnant via an emergency airlock that, remarkably, still functioned despite its age. As the seals engaged with a hiss of equalizing pressure, Mira activated her environmental suit's external sensors. The readings were puzzling. Oxygen levels within human-tolerable ranges, minimal radiation, temperature low but not critical. The ship appeared to be maintaining life support at minimal levels. But for whom? Proceed with caution, Mira instructed as the airlock cycled open. We don't know what automated defense systems might still be active. They entered a narrow corridor lit only by the emergency strips along the floor, dim blue light that cast eerie shadows across surfaces covered in a fine layer of crystalline frost. Their suit lights cut through the gloom, revealing walls inscribed with what appeared to be handwritten notations in human script, calculations, diagram, and fragments of poetry or prayer. Someone was very busy, Silika observed, her serpentine form moving with fluid grace despite the confines of her environmental suit. These writings, they are the work of a mind attempting to solve a problem, a mind on the edge of breakthrough or breakdown. Kor-An ran a scanner over the inscriptions. Some of these equations relate to pocket universe theory, fringe science that even the Consortium for Advanced Physics abandoned as impractical. Humans had a talent for the impractical, Mira noted, moving deeper into the vessel. They achieved breakthroughs precisely because they pursued what other species dismissed as impossible. The corridor opened into what appeared to be the ship's central chamber, a spherical room where every surface was covered in the same dense handwritten notations. At the center floated a containment field housing a crystalline object about the size of an Ilari's fist. The crystal pulsed with inner light, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Incredible, whispered Vex, who had joined them from the Parhelion. It's generating its own gravitational field. That shouldn't be possible for an object of this mass. Mira approached carefully, studying the crystal without touching the containment field. Its light pulsed in patterns that seemed almost familiar to her, reminiscent of the thought patterns visible beneath Ilari's skin, but more complex, more densely layered. It's some kind of data storage, she hypothesized. Perhaps the ship's memory core. No. Silika's voice had changed, becoming distant and dreamy. The empath had removed her helmet despite protocol, a dangerous action in an unknown environment. Before anyone could stop her, she had moved to within inches of the containment field. Her pupils fully dilated as she stared at the pulsing crystal. Not the ship's memories. All memories. Every memory. Empath Silika, replace your helmet immediately, Mira ordered, alarmed by the Zalathi's behavior. Can't you hear them? Captain? Silika whispered, ignoring the command. They're all here. Billions of voices. Billions of lives. Earth didn't die. Earth transcended. Kor-An moved with the startling speed his species was known for, seizing the Zalathi and forcibly replacing her helmet. The crystal is affecting her mind, he growled. We need to establish a containment perimeter and... A new voice interrupted. Human. Male. Exhausted but determined. I wouldn't do that if I were you. The memory archive is sensitive to hostile intent. It has defenses. All 5 members of the boarding party turned toward the source of the voice. A human figure stood in a doorway they hadn't noticed before. An elderly man with skin wrinkled by age and radiation exposure. His white hair wild and unkempt. He wore what appeared to be a modified environmental suit of human design, patched and repaired countless times. "Dr. Eli Vance, I presume," Mira said, the name coming to her lips before she could question how she knew it. The old man's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed with calculation. "You've heard of me. Interesting. I wasn't aware my reputation had survived along with this vessel." "It hasn't," Mira admitted, equally confused by her own knowledge. "I don't know how I know your name." Dr. Vance gestured toward the pulsing crystal. "The Archive knows you. Captain Mira Solon of the Alari Vanguard, just as it knows Commander Kor An of the Marid Confederation and Empath Seeli Ka of the Zalathi Concord." His gaze moved to each of them in turn. "It knows all of you because it contains the collective memory of Earth, including our knowledge of your species." Kor An raised his weapon instinctively. "Impossible. Human data archives were purged during the final convergence. Their knowledge died with them." "Some knowledge can't be purged, Commander," Dr. Vance replied with a thin smile. "Not when it's entangled at the quantum level with the fabric of reality itself." He stepped fully into the chamber, moving with the careful precision of someone conserving energy. "What you see before you is humanity's final project, not a weapon, as our enemies feared, but a repository, a way to ensure that even if our bodies perished, our memories would endure." Mira's inner light pulsed with growing understanding. "The anonymous message that led us here. Did you send it?" Dr. Vance shook his head. "I've been in cryostasis for most of the past 50 years, waking only for brief periods to maintain the archive. The message came from the archive itself. It sensed your appointment as Earth's envoy and recognized an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" Mira asked, her tone cautious but curious. "Completion," the elderly human answered simply. "The memory archive was never meant to remain hidden. It was meant to be shared, to bridge the gap between species that war tore apart." He gestured toward the crystal. "This is no ordinary data storage. Captain, it's a quantum-entangled network capable of transmitting memories directly from mind to mind, across any distance. Imagine experiencing the lives of other beings as if they were your own. Imagine true understanding, not just of facts and figures, but of hopes and fears and dreams." Kor An's mandibles clicked in alarm. "Mind control technology. This is exactly what the Conclave feared. This is why Earth had to be neutralized." "Not control," Dr. Vance corrected firmly. "Connection. There's a difference. The archive can only share memories with willing participants. It cannot force entry into any mind." Mira studied the pulsing crystal with new appreciation. If what Dr. Vance claimed was true, the archive represented technology far beyond anything the Conclave currently possessed. Technology that could transform interstellar relations or destroy them, depending on how it was used. "Why have you kept this hidden for 50 years?" she asked. "Why reveal it now?" The old scientist's expression grew somber. "The archive wasn't complete when Earth fell. I've spent decades refining it, preparing it for its purpose, and I needed to wait for the right envoy, someone who could understand its potential without fearing it." His eyes, remarkably sharp despite his age, fixed on Mira. "The archive chose you, Captain Solon. It sensed in you a mind open to possibilities." Before Mira could respond, the ship's systems suddenly flared to life around them, lights brightening, dormant consoles activating. An automated warning echoed through the chamber. "Proximity alert! Multiple vessels detected on intercept course." Dr. Vance's face paled. "They've found us. Sooner than I expected." "Who?" Mira demanded. "Everyone," the human replied grimly. "The archive's activation sent a quantum pulse through the rift, impossible to shield, impossible to disguise. Every major power monitoring this sector will have detected it, and they'll all want the same thing." He gestured toward the crystal. Control of the most powerful memory technology ever created. As if to confirm his words, Mira's communication implant chimed with an incoming transmission from the Parhelion. "Captain," came Vex's urgent voice, "we're detecting multiple approach vectors, vessels of Marid, Zalathi, and void speaker configuration, all converging on our position. They're demanding we secure the human craft and await their arrival." The political implications crashed down on Mira with sudden clarity. Every faction represented on the War Council would fight for control of the archive. The temporary peace established after Earth's fall would shatter as each species sought to harness human memory technology for their own advantage. Unless... "Dr. Vance," Mira said, her decision crystallizing even as she spoke. "You said the archive can only connect with willing minds. Can it connect with the Council itself? All of them, simultaneously?" The elderly scientist considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Theoretically, yes. The quantum entanglement field has no practical distance limitation, but it would require a focal point, a physical location where the archive could be safely housed while establishing the initial connections. The empty seat," Mira realized. Earth's seat on the War Council. That's where the archive belongs, not as a weapon to be controlled by any one faction, but as a bridge between all of them. Koran stepped forward, his posture rigid with alarm. "Captain Solon, I must formally object. We cannot allow human technology of this magnitude to be installed in the heart of the conclave without proper study and containment protocols. Your objection is noted, Commander," Mira replied, her tone leaving no room for debate. "As Earth's appointed envoy, I am exercising my authority to secure this artifact for transport to the Council chamber, and if I refuse to allow it," the Marid warrior challenged, his weapon still raised. To everyone's surprise, it was Seeli Ka who answered. The Zalathi empath had removed her helmet again, her scales shimmering with unusual patterns as she positioned herself between Koran and the archive. "You felt it too, Commander," she said softly. "When you scanned the equations on the wall, for just a moment, you understood what the humans were attempting. You saw the elegance of their solution." Her vertical pupils dilated fully. "The archive has already touched your mind, just as it has touched mine. Not controlling, connecting." Koran's compound eyes flickered with conflicting emotions. His weapon lowered slightly as uncertainty crept into his posture. "I fought humans," he said finally, his voice rougher than usual. "I saw what they were capable of in battle. Their determination, their willingness to sacrifice everything. Then help me show the Council what else they were capable of," Mira urged. "Help me prove that Earth's final legacy wasn't destruction, but understanding." The Marid warrior stood frozen for a long moment, internal conflict visible in the twitching of his mandibles and the subtle shifts of his exoskeleton. Finally, with a sound that might have been resignation or acceptance, he lowered his weapon completely. "If the archive proves dangerous," he warned, "I will destroy it myself, regardless of Council sanctions." "Fair enough," Mira agreed. She turned to Dr. Vance. "Can the archive be safely transported?" The elderly scientist nodded. "Its containment field is self-sustaining, but I must accompany it. There are calibration sequences that only I can perform. Then we'd better move quickly." Mira decided. "Our visitors will be here soon, and I'd rather present them with a fait accompli than a negotiation." As they prepared to transfer the memory archive to the Parhelion, Mira found herself wondering if she was making the right choice. She had been appointed to represent Earth's interests, but what were those interests, really? Preservation of human knowledge? Redemption of their reputation, or something more profound? The fulfillment of a vision that had come too late to save humanity itself, but might yet transform the galaxy they had left behind. The journey back to the War Council chamber was a gauntlet of diplomatic standoffs and thinly veiled threats. The Parhelion, with its precious cargo, traveled under escort from vessels representing every major stellar power, ostensibly for protection, actually for surveillance. Each faction sent continuous demands for inspection access to the human artifact, citing security protocols and containment concerns. Mira denied them all, invoking her authority as Earth's envoy with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. The memory archive remained secured in the Parhelion's most shielded compartment, with Dr. Vance attending to its maintenance and Silica standing guard, the empath having formed an unexpectedly protective bond with the crystalline repository. Kor-An, surprisingly, had become Mira's strongest ally in navigating the political minefield. The Marid warrior's reputation for uncompromising hostility toward human technology made his support for her plan all the more significant to the other factions. If Kor-An believed the archive should be presented to the full council rather than claimed by any one species, there must be compelling reasons. "They're afraid," the Marid observed as they approached the neutron star that housed the council chamber. "Not just of the archive itself, but of what it represents." "Which is?" Mira prompted, curious about his perspective. "The possibility that they were wrong." Kor-An's compound eyes fixed on the distant star. "That humans were not the threat we believed them to be. That we might have destroyed a civilization that was reaching for connection rather than conquest." Mira's inner light pulsed with surprise. "That's not what I expected you to say." The warrior's scarred exoskeleton shifted in what might have been a shrug. "The equations on the Astra remnant, they weren't weapons schematics. They were communication protocols, ways to bridge consciousness across species boundaries." His mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "I've spent 50 years believing I helped save the galaxy from human aggression. I'm not yet convinced otherwise, but I am willing to consider alternatives." When they finally docked at the council station, they were met by a delegation of security officers from multiple species, led by High Arbiter Nyx himself. The ancient Void Speaker's gaseous form swirled with unusual intensity within its containment field, a sign of agitation or anticipation. Mira couldn't tell which. "Captain Solon," Nyx intoned, vapor tendrils extending in formal greeting. "You have exceeded your authority as Earth's envoy. The retrieval of unclassified human technology should have been immediately reported to the full council." "With respect, High Arbiter," Mira replied, maintaining perfect military posture. "My authority as envoy includes determining what serves Earth's interests. In this case, those interests align perfectly with the Council's founding principle: the preservation of knowledge that transcends any single species." "We will be the judge of that," Nyx countered. "The human artifact must be surrendered for examination before any decision regarding its disposition can be made." Mira had anticipated this demand. "The memory archive, for that is its proper designation, will be presented to the full council today, with all representatives present." "Impossible," declared Elder Tukavir, who had joined the reception party. The senior Marid's 6 limbs arranged themselves in a pattern indicating authoritative refusal. "Council protocols require thorough analysis of all potentially hazardous technologies before general exposure." "The archive is not hazardous," came Dr. Vance's voice as the elderly human emerged from the Parhelion's airlock, supported by Silica. Despite his age and the physical strain of the journey, he stood as straight as his bent frame allowed, facing the alien delegation with quiet dignity. "It can only connect with willing minds. It poses no threat to those who choose not to engage with it." Murmurs rippled through the security delegation at the sight of an actual human, the first most had ever encountered. For 50 years, humanity had been a memory, a cautionary tale, a subject for historical analysis. Now, embodied in Dr. Vance's frail but determined presence, the abstract became concrete. "Who is this?" demanded Nyx, vapor swirling rapidly. "Dr. Eli Vance," Mira introduced formally. creator of the Memory Archive and last surviving human from the Astra remnant. As Earth's envoy, I grant him diplomatic protection and the right to address the Council. It was a bold move, perhaps too bold. The security officers tensed, weapon systems humming to readiness. For a moment, Mira thought she had miscalculated. That force would be used to seize both the archive and its creator. Then Koran stepped forward, positioning himself beside Dr. Vance. "I will vouch for the human's conduct," the married warrior declared, "and I support Captain Solin's request for an immediate council session." The gesture was shocking enough to create momentary confusion among the security forces. Koran, whose hatred of humans was legendary, whose body bore the scars of their weapons, now stood as protector to the last of their kind. Elder Turkavir's compound eyes fixed on his subordinate with clear disapproval. "Commander Koran, explain yourself. I have examined the archive's operational principles," Koran stated, the formal phrasing indicating he was making an official report rather than a personal appeal. "It represents no immediate threat but significant potential benefit. Full council review is appropriate." A tense silence followed as Nix and Turkavir communicated privately through encrypted channels, weighing options and political implications. Finally, the High Arbiter's vapor form condensed into its formal configuration. "The Council will convene in 1 standard hour," Nix announced. "The human artifact will remain under joint security until then. Dr. Eli Vance may address the assembly, but any activation of unknown technology will be considered a hostile act." It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. As the security detail escorted them toward temporary quarters, Mira found herself walking beside Dr. Vance, matching her pace to his slower steps. "Are you certain the archive will function as intended?" she asked quietly. 50 years is a long time for any technology to remain viable, especially one as complex as you've described. The elderly scientist's eyes crinkled with a tired smile. "The archive doesn't just store memories. Captain Solin, in a very real sense, it is memory, quantum entangled with the consciousness of every human who contributed to it before Earth's fall. It has been patiently waiting for this moment." He glanced at her with sudden intensity. "As have I. You knew this would happen, that someone would find the Astra remnant?" "Not specifically," he admitted. "But I knew humanity's story couldn't end with extinction. Our final chapter had to be connection, not conflict. The universe demands balance." As they were settled into their waiting area, comfortable but clearly monitored, Silikar approached with the containment field housing the memory archive. The crystal within pulsed with increasing vigor, its patterns more complex and rapid than before. "It senses where it is," the Zealothi empath observed. "It recognizes the significance of this place." Dr. Vance nodded. "The council chamber represents the very division the archive was designed to overcome, species segregated by their differences, united only in their approach to war. Here, at the heart of that division, the archive can fulfill its purpose." Mira watched the pulsing crystal with growing unease. Everything was happening too quickly, driven by forces she didn't fully understand. She had acted on instinct in bringing the archive here, instinct and a strange certainty that felt almost like memory, though not her own. "What will happen?" she asked finally. "When the archive connects with the council?" Dr. Vance considered the question carefully. "Understanding," he said simply. "Not agreement. The archive doesn't erase differences of opinion or interest, but understanding of the kind that only comes from experiencing another's perspective directly, the kind that makes it impossible to dehumanize your opponent." He paused, then smiled wryly at his choice of words. "Or de-alienize, I suppose. And if the Council refuses connection, then at least humanity's final offering will be witnessed." The scientist replied, "Our legacy recorded not as conquerors or victims, but as innovators who reached for something better than endless war." His expression grew distant. That alone would be worth 50 years of waiting. The council chamber looked different with all 57 seats occupied, or nearly all. The empty seat remained conspicuously vacant, its obsidian surface gleaming under the cold light as representatives from across the galaxy arranged themselves in concentric rings around it. Mira stood before the assembly, flanked by Dr. Vance and Silly Ka. The memory archive, still within its containment field, hovered between them, pulsing with light that seemed to intensify in the chamber's unique acoustics. High Arbiter Nix opened the session with formal gravity. We are convened to address the discovery of prohibited human technology and the unprecedented presence of a surviving human representative. Captain Mira Solon, as Earth's appointed envoy, you may present your findings. Mira stepped forward, her crystalline form radiating calm authority despite her inner uncertainty. Esteemed Council, I present to you humanity's final legacy. Not a weapon of destruction, but an instrument of understanding. The Memory Archive represents technology developed during Earth's last days, designed not to extend their conflict, but to transcend it. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, skeptical, curious, alarmed. Elder Tokavir rose on his articulated limbs, mandibles clicking for attention. The historical record is clear, the married elder declared. Earth's final transmissions indicated deployment of a weapon capable of reshaping reality itself, a threat so severe that the combined fleets of 17 stellar nations were mobilized to neutralize it. The historical record is incomplete, Mira countered. What those fleets encountered was not a weapon, but a protective field surrounding the memory archive. A field designed to preserve Earth's collective knowledge even as the civilization itself fell. Convenient reinterpretation, noted Delegate Zorix of the Trelan hierarchy, their bioluminescent appendages flashing with skepticism. 50 years after the fact, with no witnesses save one conveniently preserved human. Dr. Vance stepped forward, his aged frame somehow dignified in its fragility. I am not merely a witness, delegate. I am the archive's architect, and I submit myself to the Council's judgment alongside my creation. The human offers itself for examination, observed a representative of the machine collective known as the Algorithmic Consensus. This suggests confidence in its claims or sophisticated deception. Analysis is required. Nix's vapor form pulsed with impatience. What exactly does this memory archive do, Dr. Vance? In precise terms, the elderly scientist gestured toward the pulsing crystal. The archive establishes quantum entanglement between minds, allowing direct sharing of experiential memory across species boundaries. It translates the neurological patterns of one being into forms comprehensible to another, creating understanding that transcends linguistic or cultural barriers. Mind control, declared Elder Tokavir flatly. No, Dr. Vance corrected firmly. The archive cannot impose memories or influence thought. It can only share what is willingly offered, and only with those who willingly receive. Mira intervened before the discussion could devolve further. The proof of Dr. Vance's claims lies in demonstration, not debate. I propose that the memory archive be installed in Earth's empty seat, the position it was ultimately designed to occupy, and that volunteers from the Council experience its capabilities firsthand. The chamber erupted in overlapping objections and counterproposals. Security concerns, procedural violations, historical precedents, all were invoked in a cacophony that threatened to overwhelm any possibility of progress. Then, unexpectedly, Koran's voice cut through the din. The Marid warrior had taken his place among his species' delegation, but now he rose, commanding attention through sheer presence. I will volunteer, he declared, mandibles clicking in formal declaration. I, who have fought humans in battle. I, who carry the scars of their weapons. I will be the first to test this archive. The chamber fell silent. Koran's offer was politically unassailable. If anyone had reason to fear or reject human technology, it was he. His willingness to engage with the archive undermined every security objection. Silika glided forward, her serpentine form weaving patterns of formal discourse. I too will volunteer. As an empath, I am uniquely positioned to verify the archive's effects on consciousness. One by one, representatives from other delegations added their support, some cautiously, others with growing curiosity. The tide of opinion shifted as the possibility of experiencing humanity's final legacy firsthand overrode institutional caution. High Arbiter Nix, sensing the changing mood of the Council, made a formal pronouncement. The memory archive will be temporarily installed in the empty seat for controlled demonstration. Security protocols will remain at maximum alert. Any sign of adverse effects will result in immediate deactivation. Dr. Vance nodded in acceptance of these terms. With careful movements, he guided the containment field housing the archive toward the obsidian chair that had symbolized Earth's absence for 50 years. As the crystal neared the seat, something remarkable happened. The blue-green swirls in the obsidian began to pulse in rhythm with the archive's inner light, as if the two had been designed for each other. The seat was prepared, Dr. Vance explained, noticing the Council's collective surprise. In Earth's final days, as the combined fleets approached, we sent quantum-entangled particles to key locations throughout the galaxy, including this chamber. We hoped that someday the archive would find its way here. With a subtle manipulation of the containment field controls, the scientist lowered the memory archive onto the empty seat. The crystals seemed to meld with the obsidian, sinking partially into its surface while remaining visible, a heart of light at the center of darkness. Now, Dr. Vance said softly, who will be first to remember? Kor-An stepped forward without hesitation, his scarred exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber's cold light. He approached the seat that had stood empty for half a century, now transformed by the pulsing crystal at its center. What must I do? The married warrior asked, compound eyes fixed on the archive. Simply place your primary sensory appendage in contact with the crystal, Dr. Vance instructed. The archive will do the rest. Kor-An extended one armored limb, the appendage that housed his species' most sensitive environmental receptors. As it touched the surface of the crystal, a visible pulse of energy traveled up his limb and throughout his body. The warrior went rigid, his compound eyes flaring with inner light. For several tense moments, the chamber was silent save for the subtle hum of the archive. Then Kor-An spoke, but the voice that emerged was not entirely his own. Layered within it were echoes of other voices, human voices, speaking through him while leaving his consciousness intact. I am Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force, the voice began, using Kor-An's vocal apparatus but with distinctly human patterns. I died in the Battle of Proxima Centauri, fighting alongside allies from 7 species against an enemy none of us understood. My final memories were uploaded to the archive. The warrior's body trembled with the effort of channeling the alien consciousness, but he made no move to break contact with the crystal. Indeed, his posture suggested something between shock and recognition. I recognize you, Kor-An of the Married Confederation. The voice continued. Not personally, but your kind. We fought together at Barnard's Star. Your people saved my transport when the gravity drives failed. I remember your courage. The Council watched in stunned silence as more memories flowed through the warrior, human scientists working alongside alien collaborators. Desperate plans formed in the shadow of approaching doom. Children being evacuated as a last hope for survival. Through it all, Kor-An remained connected to the archive, experiencing humanity's final days from within. When he finally broke contact, the married warrior stood motionless for several long moments, his exoskeleton quivering with emotion no one present had ever seen him display. They knew, he said finally, his own voice restored but forever changed. They knew they were going to fall. The archive wasn't meant to save them. It was meant to save what they had learned, what they had felt, what they had hoped. His compound eyes swept the chamber. They were not the enemy we believed them to be. One by one, other council members approached the archive. Silly Ka, the empath, whose serpentine form writhed with empathic overload as she connected with thousands of human emotional landscapes simultaneously. Representative Zhorix of the Trelan hierarchy, whose bioluminescent patterns began to pulse in harmony with the archive's rhythms. Even a delegate from the algorithmic consensus, whose mechanical interface adapted to receive the quantum-entangled memories. Each emerged changed, not controlled or corrupted, but expanded. Where before they had known humanity only as historical record or tactical assessment, now they carried direct experience of human consciousness. For species that had evolved in isolation, separated by vast gulfs of space and perception, this direct connection represented something unprecedented, true empathy across the boundaries of biology and culture. High Arbiter Nyx observed the proceedings with growing interest. Vapor tendrils extending toward the archive in what might have been curiosity or caution. Finally, the ancient void speaker approached the transformed empty seat. "If I connect with this device," Nyx inquired of Dr. Vance, "will I remain myself?" The elderly scientist nodded. "The archive doesn't replace identity. It supplements it. You will gain understanding without losing yourself." With what appeared to be a moment of private deliberation, the High Arbiter extended a vapor tendril toward the crystal. The contact produced a stunning visual effect. Nyx's gaseous form suddenly illuminated from within by patterns of light that echoed the archive's pulsations. When the void speaker finally spoke, the normally dispassionate tone carried unusual emotional resonance. "I have witnessed the fall of Earth from within human perception. I have felt their terror and their resolve. I have shared their final moments." The vapor form condensed into a configuration the council recognized as profound respect. They did not fall in vain. As the session continued, more delegates experienced the archive's connection, each returning with new perspective and insight. The empty seat, long a symbol of humanity's absence, had become a focal point for their enduring presence, not as physical beings, but as memory and consciousness preserved beyond the death of their civilization. Mira observed it all with growing wonder and vindication. She had acted on instinct in bringing the archive here, guided by something she couldn't articulate, and now she understood. The crystal had been calling to her all along, recognizing in her the potential to complete its journey. "It's time." "Captain Solon," Dr. Vance said quietly, appearing at her side. The elderly scientist looked both exhausted and exhilarated, the weight of 50 years of solitary guardian duty finally lifting from his shoulders. "The archive has been waiting for you most of all." "Why me?" Mira asked, though some part of her already knew the answer. "Because you were chosen as Earth's envoy," he replied simply. "The archive recognized the symmetry. It needs a permanent connection, someone who can speak for humanity when I am gone." Mira's inner light flickered with uncertainty. "I'm Ilari. How can I speak for humanity?" Dr. Vance smiled. "That's precisely the point. The archive doesn't need another human. It needs a bridge between what humanity was and what the galaxy can become." He gestured toward the obsidian seat with its pulsing crystal heart. "Will you accept the connection?" It was a profound choice, one that would irrevocably change her. To carry humanity's collective memory alongside her own. To become not just a symbolic envoy, but a literal one, connecting a lost civilization to the future they had envisioned, but never lived to see, with a decision that felt both momentous and inevitable. Mira approached the archive, her crystalline hand extended toward the pulsing heart of memory, fingertips brushing against its surface. Connection. A flood of human consciousness poured into her, billions of lives, billions of perspectives, all carefully preserved and organized, not random or overwhelming, but curated and contextualized. The archive had been designed not to drown recipients in raw data, but to share understanding in forms they could integrate with their own experience. Mira witnessed Earth's beauty through countless human eyes, its oceans and mountains, its cities and wilderness. She felt human emotions with their unique intensity, love and grief, hope and despair, the peculiar, bittersweet joy that seemed to define the species. She experienced human history as lived reality rather than academic record, their struggles and triumphs, their cruelties and kindnesses. Most importantly, she understood at last why Earth had created the archive, not from fear of extinction, though that had certainly been imminent, not from desire for posthumous vindication, though that had played a part, but from a profound recognition that consciousness itself, the ability to experience, to remember, to connect, transcended the boundaries of species and biology. That sharing memory might succeed where sharing territory had failed. When Mira finally broke contact with the archive, she found the council chamber transformed. The delegates who had experienced connection stood or hovered or floated in attitudes of contemplation, each processing the expansion of perspective in their own way. Those who had not yet connected waited with diminished skepticism, their resistance eroded by the visible impact on their peers. High Arbiter Nyx's vapor form coalesced into the configuration used for formal declarations. Captain Mira Solon, as High Arbiter of the Conclave of Stellar War Councils. I ask you, what does Earth request of us? The question was traditional, asked of every envoy when major policy decisions were at stake. But never before had it been asked of Earth's representative, the empty seat having stood as silent testimony to a voice forever lost. Mira stood before the assembly, her crystalline form now subtly different, inner light pulsing with patterns that echoed the archive's rhythms, carrying within her the memories of a civilization that had gambled everything on this moment of connection. Earth requests remembrance, she answered, her voice steady with newfound certainty. Not as a cautionary tale of extinction, but as partners in the great project of consciousness, Earth requests that the memory archive remain here, in this chamber, accessible to all who wish to understand rather than merely know. She gestured toward Dr. Vance, the elderly scientist who had preserved humanity's legacy through 50 years of solitude. Earth requests asylum for its last living representative, that he might guide others in connecting with the archive for as long as his life endures. Then, with a sweeping gaze that encompassed the entire council, Mira delivered Earth's final request. And Earth requests that this body, convened for war, consider a new purpose, one that honors the sacrifice of all civilizations lost to conflict by preserving their memory alongside their strategies. Let this be a council not just of war, but of remembrance. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her words resonated through the assembly. Then, slowly, a sound began to build. Not vocal acclamation or physical gestures of approval, but something more profound. Each species, in their own way, was acknowledging the rightness of her proposal. Bioluminescent patterns flashed in complex harmonies, crystalline bodies pulsed with synchronized light. Vapor forms arranged themselves in configurations of solemn acceptance. High Arbiter Nyx formalized what had already been decided. The memory archive will remain installed in Earth's seat, available to all council members who wish to connect. Dr. Eli Vance is granted protected status as Keeper of the Archive, and this body will henceforth be known as the Conclave of Stellar War and Remembrance Councils, preserving both vigilance and understanding as our dual mandate. As the session concluded, delegates approached the archive one by one, some connecting for the first time, others returning to explore different facets of humanity's preserved consciousness. The empty seat stood empty no more, transformed into a living bridge between past and future, between species that had once seen only enemies and now glimpsed the possibility of something more. Dr. Vance found Mira observing from a quiet corner of the chamber. The elderly scientist looked smaller somehow, as if the transfer of the archive's guardianship had diminished him physically, even as it had lifted his spiritual burden. "Was it worth it?" Mira asked him softly. 50 years alone, waiting for this moment." Dr. Vance smiled, a human expression that Mira now understood from within, having experienced it through countless memories. "I was never truly alone," he replied. "The archive held billions of voices, billions of lives. I carried Earth with me every day." He glanced toward the transformed obsidian seat with its pulsing crystal heart. "And now, so will you." "Not just me," Mira corrected, her inner light pulsing with newfound purpose. "All of us who choose to remember." As newly appointed permanent envoy to Earth, Mira Solon took her place beside the seat that had once symbolized humanity's extinction and now represented their enduring presence. Not as conquerors or victims, but as memory made manifest, a chorus of voices that had fallen silent in body but continued to speak through the connections they had forged. The neutron star's cold light pulsed through the chamber, illuminating the conclave as it began its work anew, preserving the strategies of war while honoring the greater victory of remembrance.